If you love kombucha as much as I, but you're tired of spending $4 or more at the store for a bottle of kombucha, today I'm going to show you how to brew kombucha at home for pennies on the dollar. Welcome back to Nancy's Homestyle Kitchen, where I share how to cook real food with simple ingredients and no pressure to be perfect. Kombucha is a fermented tea made with sweet tea and a SCOBY, which provides a beneficial bacteria and yeast and gives the tea a tangy, light, fizzy flavor. And the only thing you really need to be able to make kombucha at home is a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic culture of bacterial yeast. I will show that to you in just a moment. You need some starter tea, which is some kombucha that is already made, a little bit of sweet tea, and some water. There's also an optional second fermentation step where you can impart your favorite fruit flavors or herbs to make this beverage even more delicious. The main powerhouse behind kombucha is the SCOBY. Now, you can purchase a SCOBY online. You can get a SCOBY from a friend or neighbor who also brews kombucha, or you could start your own SCOBY. So the first step I'm going to show you is how to create your own SCOBY. These are the measurements to make the sweet tea to start your own SCOBY. I'm going to start with 3 cups of water. And to that, I'm going to dissolve 1/2 cup of sugar. Okay, this is almost up to a simmer. It is hot enough, definitely, to steep the tea bags. So I'm adding 4 English breakfast tea bags. To make your own SCOBY, they don't recommend using Earl Grey, which I use to make the kombucha because of the oils. So they recommend something like just a regular black tea, like an English breakfast. So I'm just gonna let this sit here and steep and cool to room temperature, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that the sweet tea has cooled to room temperature, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the tea bags. Just toss them in the trash. And I'm gonna put this sweet tea into a gallon size ball mason jar. Now this gallon size jar is not made for canning. It's not made to put a lid on and process. This is more of like a decorative mason jar. So I just want you to be sure that you're not getting anything like this and trying to use it for canning purposes. I got these at Walmart. I think they were roughly $15 or $20. You could use a pickle jar. You can use anything that is big, but this is a gallon. So to start a SCOBY, you need kombucha. So I bought 1 bottle of kombucha. It was almost $4 at the grocery store. And this is GT's Pure Kombucha. Sometimes it's hard to find. You can find GT's makes another one called Gingerade. You could use that, or you could use any other kombucha that you can find that is raw, unfiltered, unpasteurized, because this has all of the goodness and beneficial bacteria that are going to go in here in the sweet tea and feed on it to create the SCOBY. And then these jars, you can also save them and reuse them to put your kombucha brew in at the next process. But that is all you need. I've written today's date, 8/1, on the side, so I know when I made this. You need a breathable cloth, so either a piece of material or a coffee filter, and put a rubber band around it. You don't want to put a lid on this. This needs to breathe. And we're going to store this in a cool, dark place that's roughly between 70 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit in the dark. So I'm just going to pop this in my pantry. So what's going to happen over the course of the next 1 to 2 weeks is you're going to start seeing a film appear on the top of this sweet tea. That is the development of your SCOBY. So the bacteria and the yeast that came from this jar are starting to feed on the sugar in the other tea, and they're going to form the SCOBY. Now, this could take 4 to 5 weeks to totally complete the process. Just be patient. Don't stir it. You don't need to add anything to it. You just want to keep this in a clean environment. And once that SCOBY reaches about a 1/4 inch thick, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is brewing the kombucha for your very first batch. And after that step too, so there's something I want to clarify. So the tea that I just poured in here, I'm calling it sweet tea. It is just a tea that we just made with sugar, water, and tea bags. Now that there's kombucha in here, and after this SCOBY has developed, we're going to refer to the liquid in here as your starter tea. And you're always going to use starter tea and your SCOBY with a new batch of sweet tea and filtered water to brew your batch. So you're always going to transfer your SCOBY and about 2 to 3 cups of this starter tea to help continue brewing going forward. So you can see how inexpensive this is. So this one jar costs about this one bottle costs about $4. I used 4 tea bags that I already had, half a cup of sugar, and some water. So now after this gets going, my only cost really on making kombucha from here on out is the sugar and tea bags, and then if I want to flavor it, some fruit. And I like to use the organic frozen blueberries from Costco. You could use whatever you want. So it is really much more economical than buying bottles and bottles of kombucha. So anyway, I'm going to pop this in the pantry. I'll show you what my SCOBY looks like and how I start my kombucha brewing process. If you don't want to go through this step, look online on Facebook and some homestead groups in your local area. Put a post on there. Does anybody have a kombucha SCOBY that they're willing to give away? Because once the SCOBY just keeps developing and developing, it actually forms layers, and you can peel a layer off and pour off about 2 cups of your starter tea and give that to somebody so they don't have to go through this process, and they could just jump right into brewing their own kombucha. You can also buy a SCOBY online. I've never done that. I'm just fortunate that I've tried this step before and had kombucha for one summer, and the last 2 summers I get it from my neighbor who brews kombucha on a continual basis. So anyway, let's move on to the next step. Kombucha is something my husband and I typically really enjoy, especially during the summer months. In the winter months, I don't do it so much. It's cold up here where we live. But this is a very refreshing drink in the summer. So I'm going to show you my kombucha process. So this kombucha has been brewing for about 7 days. And I'm ready to pour this off into my bottles so I could do a second fermentation process with some flavors. And I have some blueberries. I like the pineapple juice flavor, but I kind of want to show you what kombucha is. It's basically black tea that has been fermented with a SCOBY. And I just washed my hands. So this is a SCOBY. It's a symbiotic culture of bacterial yeast. It looks funky. It is a skin that basically forms on the top of the liquid. And this is what ferments. It's a yeast that actively feeds on the sugar and makes like the tea into a carbonated drink. And it's really yummy. It's really good for your gut health. Okay, I needed to go grab a paper towel. So I'm gonna put my SCOBY into this bowl, and I'm gonna reserve 2 to 3 cups of kombucha, because this is gonna be my starter for my next batch. So I'm gonna move this to the side. And then with what is left in this jar, I'm going to strain it out into this big container. So about once a week, this is the process that I do. And let that sit for a moment. And there is some residue on the bottom. This is totally normal. I'm just gonna rinse this out. Okay, I'm gonna set this to the side because we will fill these in just a moment. But I wanna show you how to redo and reset your kombucha so now you can brew another batch. So this is how I make the sweet tea for the kombucha. Just put a pot on the stove. I have 2 cups of water. And 1 cup of sugar. And I'm going to heat this up until the sugar dissolves. Once the sugar has dissolved in the water, I'm going to add 7 tea bags. I like to use Earl Grey tea. And I just take it off the heat and let it cool while the tea bags are steeping. And this is the sweet tea that is going to provide the food for our SCOBY to brew our next batch of kombucha. The only things that you need to brew a batch of kombucha is a SCOBY. You need some starter culture, which is some kombucha that was just freshly brewed. You need some sweet tea, which I just showed you over at the stove that I made with 2 cups of water, 1 cup of sugar, and 7 tea bags that I let steep and cool to room temperature. And then just some fresh water. You don't want to use chlorinated water. We're on a well, so this is just like a natural spring water. So I'm going to add the cold sweet tea. And the sugar in this is what this SCOBY is going to feed on and ferment. Then I want to add some fresh water. Okay, I may top it off because I'm going to add this kombucha that I reserved from the batch that I just strained out. Let me top it off with more water. Add your SCOBY on top. It'll sink. It does like all kinds of funky things. Don't worry about it. But that just kind of sits there. And then cover it with a cloth. So something that is breathable. And a rubber band. Now on the side of my jar here, I don't know if you saw, I have the date that I did my last batch. It says 7/24. So what I'm gonna do is wipe that off. I'll put today's date on there. I'm gonna put this in my pantry in a nice, cool, dark place and let it brew or ferment for the next week. And then I'll have another batch to fill bottles and make tea. So let me move this to the side. Okay, because now we're gonna do the second ferment, which is bottling it up, and we're gonna let it sit for another 7 days. So there are 2 types of kombucha bottles. There are these, and I get these from a kombucha supply store because the bottles need to be strong. They build up a ton of pressure during the fermentation process, so you don't want to use cheap bottles. So make sure you get them from a trusted kombucha store retailer. And then I have these kind of old style flip top glass bottles that this pops down, and these are really, really strong. Like, sometimes, no, just cut that part out. It's like really hard. Okay. Those are really strong. And you have to be careful when you open them because they are super pressurized. And yeah, you could get kombucha everywhere. But I'm going to be flavoring my kombucha this time with blueberries. So the blueberries don't fit in these jars very well. I normally use these jars for something like a juice, and I like to add pineapple juice for that ferment. But today I'm going to be bottling up blueberry flavor. So you want to get a funnel, and you're just going to start filling your jars. I might get 2 more out of this. But if you like iced tea and you like carbonated drinks, I would highly recommend giving this a try. There's some bottled kombucha that you can buy at the store. Whoa, that's a lot. It's kind of hit and miss for me, honestly. Some I really don't care for. But this homemade one I really, really like. One, because I can just customize the flavor to what I like. It's not overly flavored. And I kind of just like the tea anyway. So let me put that to the side. And now we're going to go in with some blueberries. So these are just organic frozen blueberries from Costco that I let thaw out. And I like that they're kind of broken down because I feel like the fermentation process will, it's better and it extracts more of the flavor because the skins are already broken and they're kind of juicy to begin with. So it imparts more of the blueberry flavor into the kombucha. I actually might need that to top these off, so I am not going to put blueberries in that one right now. But you can see I'm putting quite a few. There's so many different flavor combinations, and it's actually really fun just to kind of play around with different flavor combinations till you find one that you liked. Strawberry and blueberry works really good. And I just used the frozen organic strawberries as well. I've tried raspberry. Didn't really care for it because the raspberries just kind of get like almost like a pale white color. Like they kind of just break down too much. And I don't know. I kind of didn't care for it. So let's top off our bottles. And we want to go up to kind of the bend right here, or the neck of the bottle. Yeah, I'm definitely going to need some of this. And I never remember how many bottles it makes. It's just kind of like a fun science experiment every time I do it. And that one, I'm not going to fill anymore. And just clean it off and put your lid on. And I'll come back and really tighten those down. And then these are gonna sit out for about a week at room temperature. I actually just put them in the pantry where my kombucha is brewing, and I let that go. I go in and burp them a couple times a week because it does build up pressure. And then after 7 days, I pop them in the refrigerator. And my husband actually loves them too. He just comes in and he'll kind of strain out the blueberries, pour it over a big jar of ice. And for him, he loves it because it's actually really, really refreshing on those hot summer days. Okay, and then this one that is left, I could put some blueberries in here and just cap it and go with it. I don't overthink it, but I can also just pour it over some ice and just enjoy it. It's just not gonna be carbonated like these will be after they sit for another week. Now you have all the steps you need to start brewing kombucha at home and saving your money. Here we have our jars that are gonna start undergoing that second ferment over the next week in my pantry. These jars right here have already gone through that second fermentation process, and I'm currently storing them in the refrigerator, and they are ready to go and enjoy anytime you want a cool, refreshing drink. So here is my pineapple kombucha. So good, a little tangy. You totally pick up all the flavors of the tea, and there's this light carbonation and fizz to it, and it is just the perfect beverage for summer. The full recipe and instructions will be listed in the description box below. As always, if you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. And I will be back next week with another recipe from my kitchen.